Otherwise, I was going through another thing. So at least we got that directly. So Herman, thank you very much for being part of this symposium. For the last one, I'm really sorry. Last symposium, we could only do that short session because the schedule was made. And the schedule was made in that manner, which I really felt that we have lots of more participation because the Hellenic Union of Mediators was part of it. But I think philosophy and mediation, I think people were still finding it as a difficult topic. Where would they take it? And of course, we couldn't do the part 2 with you. So Herman, of course, whenever you want, I can, after you tell us about yourself, then you'll have to give me that 2 minutes to talk about the World Mediation Circle and that. So please, Herman, you have to tell us about yourself. We have an hour slot, so now we don't have to worry about time. So
yeah, that's right. That's right. We will see if we can fill the whole hour or another part. It's no problem. Yeah. Well, I'm a mediator in Holland since 2015, and it's not very. I'm not able to choose very well, so I'm doing all kinds of mediations. Family divorce mediation, mediation at the workplace, also at the court with, how do you call it in English? The victim and restorative justice. That's the word for that. So I've a lot of experience at the moment in all kinds of mediations, and it's really at the heart of my whole being. So also the whole theme of neutrality is very interesting because it kind of contradicts the whole ethic that I'm working from, but still it's also a very important value. So I thank you very much to be able to talk about that this morning.
Well, thank you very
it's
much.
Morning here in Holland because it's not morning in India.
I think that's what I was telling Milan before this, that we have to have these neutral greetings now. So neutrality in greetings also.
Good day.
Good day, namaste, hi, those kind of thing. So now you'll have to just give me 2 minutes. I'll try to take less than that. I don't want to take your time, but just to say what we are doing here, because sometimes what happens is that, again, someone from Netherlands itself, there was a session in the World Mediators Conference on neurodiversity and mediation. And Martha was there, and she's autistic, and she said, we don't like this sudden abrupt thing that you just start off. Please tell us what you're doing here. So that's why I need to put it out there. So this is what we are doing, the International Symposium on Neutrality and Mediation. And 12th December was International Day of Neutrality. We started then with Bernie Mayer's session. I don't know whether you got to see it, but Bernie obviously has spoken a lot about neutrality, and his latest book, Neutrality Trap, he's spoken about and taken up that. And of course, this Desmond Tutu's quote definitely had to go out with it. If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse and you say that you are neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality. Interesting that came out yesterday from Mandy's session was, do you know who the mouse is and do you know who the elephant is? That's another aspect that came up. The other thing is that in terms of information, of course, there is the Mediator, Vikram.com. I try and put out, of course, for me, this is right now the last symposium, Philosophy and Mediation. This one will come up. The pictures for this will come up. Today it should come up. And basic information on what's happening, I think best is to go here. I try and keep updating it. I might be a little lax in the last few days, but we'll be there. So the World Mediation Circle, I just want to talk about it for 2 minutes only because this is my focus area now. There will be events happening 2023. No, it's not that events are not going to happen, but this is where now activity is going to happen. And of course, it starts with becoming a patron. And Herman, thank you very much for being a patron. It takes it forward. For me, look, the thing is that I had put down this earlier I'll show you here what I had put down. I said, your gift will answer the question my wife and daughter keep asking me. Why do you spend so much time promoting mediation? Why don't you do your work instead? Because look, in this world, work is going to be connected to money in the bank. That's how work is perceived. For me, this is work, money in the bank or not. That's the way I looked at it. I just, of course, enjoy it. I mean, as much as if some impact is being done, I'm really happy. But I just enjoy doing it, having conversations with people like you. It's just nice. So the World Mediation Circle being that let's create mediation circles in every country, in every community. And this is my approach And the one that I am trying to put across, there are all kinds. And I was trying to tell in Milan also, this elephant and the blind men situation. Mediation is going to be perceived in different ways in various parts and by different people. But this is my approach to mediation, that moral values, principles, and ethics-based humanistic approach to dispute resolution, which I think you also connect with.
Very
So
much. Yeah.
that's the kind of people we want to bring together, the people who have the mediator mindset of this kind. Mediator mindset will, of course, maybe people think differently, but this is for me the people with that mediator mindset, have the peacemakers to put it together, and have the participants. So we'll start small. We don't have to, I mean, it doesn't have to be the entire world at the same time. It's going to be pockets of people who understand, and I think it'll grow, because the way of feedback that I've got, I think we're on the right track. So that's about it. So basically, to start with, step one for people is to become a patron. So I've put that down there, and the connection to the Patreon site I've put up there, and you can also go here and connect. So that's how it is. Shows and events, of course, I mean, you can find on various shows and events there. Now there are more than 450 videos, so it becomes kind of an index. Ken Cloke, we have a separate section there because he's been on various shows, and you can just
Yes.
click here, and his words of wisdom. And Milan today, I mean, you have to see his session. I don't know whether you'll get, I'm sure you'll take out some time, but Milan session you must watch, because what all he's brought in is given a very, very nice direction to what the topic was. I also, like, when I put out these topics, I also don't know what direction it's going to take, what people are going to bring in, but he's brought in a very, very interesting perspective. So please have a look. So Herman, from here onwards, it's your show, neutrality and mediation. I am, like I keep saying, I'm not mute, I'm unmuted, but I'm a mute spectator. So please.
Of course, thank you very much. Well, in the end, when you do your work, it's making a great space of mediation life. I think you are creating, and maybe it's not even creating, but it's just facilitating all the mediators to be together, and that's one of thing. And I'm very happy that you have found a way to get paid as well. That's very important, of course. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much for inviting me on this interesting topic. I just Googled a little bit, and I already found such a different way of looking at neutrality. Maybe it's interesting to just quote some things I found there. The first thing I saw there was, this essentially means, neutrality, that it is the duty of the mediator to exclude any personal opinions and beliefs from the mediation process. So then neutrality is just stressing the fact that you have not to be there in the room as a person, but just as a kind of facilitator only, in a role that excludes personal views and beliefs. And already in this definition, you see a kind of subject-object dualism that is very, I think, a part of the modern way of viewing things of knowledge. How do you see the world? Well, we must see it with an impartial eye, and that's the objective and also the goal of knowledge, in a sense. And I think mediation comes out of a system that stresses that kind of looking at knowledge in the world. Another one was the neutrality of a third party who decides or mediates disputes is central to our ideas of fairness and justice in Western liberal democracies. So then it's about fairness and justice. And of course, that's a different definition. And it's interesting that this person thinks, well, that's neutrality. Third one of the most critical principles is neutrality, which requires the mediator to be unbiased with the disputing parties. Of course, there is a connection between fairness and justice and no personal opinions and beliefs, but it's a different way of talking about it. Another one, impartiality is, because very often these two are connected in the text about it. Impartiality and neutrality is characterized by the fact that the mediator has no power to settle the dispute or to make a decision with respect to the parties. So then I think in the background there is this power of the parties, the participants, that is stressed here. So you have no power, but you give the power and the room to decide for the other ones. And another one, neutrality may likewise be characterized by reference to what it accomplishes, most unmistakably reasonableness. So it's very interesting that when people talk about neutrality, they are talking about a lot of things, and it's not very easy to be sure about what it is. And a comprehension of mediator neutrality is complicated, I think, by this lack of consistency in definitions. And I quote someone, he says, one reason that the theoretical concepts seem divorced from practice is that we do not yet have a shared vocabulary in our field. Although neutrality has aspects similar to fairness, justice, and appropriateness, as well as impartiality and lack of bias, it's not the same as those concepts. So that's the first thing I want to say. It's very interesting that we always talk about neutrality. It's one of the basic values, I think, we in the introduction of mediation towards the participants, or when we talk about mediation in general, we always stress it, but it's very imprecise. And that's an interesting thing, I think. Why is it so imprecise? And in my opinion, it's imprecise because it doesn't say anything in a way. It's a kind of term that has all kinds of things in it, but maybe the term itself is not even very necessary to use anymore. So that's an interesting thought I was coming about when thinking about this theme. What do you think about that?
Oh, absolutely. I think what you brought in is exactly what we need to discuss. First of all, like you said, the lack of words to explain, or I'm taking it from lack of understanding of the process. I think maybe that is where it comes from, because we've been discussing this, that a lot of people are talking about mediation, or it has evolved in places through the court system. So certain words from the court system have come into practice there, like now, from parties to participants, which I have been speaking about. And I mean, when you talk about, I mean, of course, opening statement, which was what Milan was saying, I didn't correct him. I mean, this is not correct. I mean, my thing of orientation, which Jenny had taken up in the World Mediators Conference. So I think the terminology is very important. So there's going to be a symposium on language and mediation, which is coming up next year. Herman, you have to be part of that. So I think so I think you're on the right. I think you've taken it on the right track. Now you're just going to take us further on the track, as I can see.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. Well, I think what is the importance of neutrality, I think, is not the neutralness of the mediator, but it's the openness of the process. And in a sense, neutrality is not the characteristic of a person or behavior, but it's a characteristic of the openness of the process of mediation. And when I look at the way I think about epistemology and how do we know, I'm more from the postmodern age in that sense, and maybe in practice all mediators are, because we are always dealing with several truths. And in the narrative mediation, Michael White, for example, calls it knowledges. So not one knowledge or knowledge, but he's calling about knowledges, all the ways people are able to know things. And you are making a free space of contact between all these knowledges, all these experiences, in a sense. And you do that because of your personality also. And it's a wonderful thing. Of course, Kenneth Cloke, I must quote him in an article from Paul Bailey. It's written a while ago, 2014, in the Journal of Mediation and Pride Conflict Analysis. He ends with this quote from Mediating Dangerously, I think, about this book. And then Kenneth Cloke says, in mediation, and I think that's neutrality in a sense, but you do not use the word neutral there. There is no judge, no power to decide in anyone other than the parties, no process other than consensus, and no victory other than a rough equality of loss. What a beautiful phrase that is. No victory other than a rough equality of loss. Both sides have the right to veto any outcome they perceive as unequal. For this reason, it is not neutrality that is important, with the ability to reach out, use subjectivity, and deepen empathy and honesty between adversaries. End of quotation. So what Cloke is saying here is it's not neutrality that is important, but all the other things. I agree, of course, in a much aspects I agree with that, but in a sense, this is neutrality. I think when we use neutrality, we try to say that about the process, about what mediation is about. And I think when we talk with people that do not know how mediation works, the word neutral helps them to give them an idea about what is mediation about, that it's not decision enforcement, that we are talking and saying, well, this is what you have to do. The mediator is a kind of judge. I think in practice, the word neutral helps people to get a feeling about the safeness of the space that they are entering. So in a way, I cannot really say goodbye to the term, but we must redefine it, I think. And neutral does not mean that I am not available as a person with all my subjective opinions and feelings, etc. I think the most important thing about the way I have to be present as a mediator is that I am transparent. Also about my engagement, why I do things. What are the ethical drives that give me even a kind of idealism, a kind of way of thinking about myself as doing the good at that moment. And then in that sense, I am just not neutral. I'm there. But neutral maybe is more, as I said earlier, an aspect of the process, that the process is open and that it's just flowing with all things that are there and needs to be
flowing.
My English is not very good.
The perfect is perfect. It's
okay.
perfect.
I try to say it.
Well, I think what you brought in here again is interesting, that not neutrality of the person, but the process, safe space, or can we say neutral space? We'll develop these things as we go along. So you basically the place, the space and the process. So that is where you are looking at it and not the person. So that's interesting.
Yeah. I think that's a very important distinction. And then also when we as mediators are present in our personality and open and are able to be accountable, then also we give the other persons the room to be there also. So I think it even helps the neutrality of the process in the space when we are just there, open about what we think. Of course, it's very important that we have a responsibility to help the persons to be in their own autonomy, in their own, well, that's also an interesting concept, of course. Autonomy, is it there? Can it be there? But of course, when you say we help the people to get their own process, to get their own understanding of where they are and what they want and what they need, I also must be there. It's a kind of unsafe when I just say, well, I'm just helping. And of course, it's very important that when one participant says, well, what do you think about that? You must side with me, of course, because I'm right. Of course, that's an interesting dynamic. But I think it's very interesting to say then really what is going on within you at that moment, instead of saying, well, it's not up to me. It's from you, because in a way you leave the person alone in his own need at that moment. So I think transparency, really being open about what is going on inside you, is helping the neutrality of the space and of the process.
Interesting, really interesting, because what you're saying is I am there to keep that space neutral.
Yes.
Yep.
And maybe neutral is even then, maybe the better word is safe, open,
safe,
alive.
yeah.
And well, it's free. Maybe that's the best word, that it's a free space where everything can happen and there is no judgment about things. Of course, when an elephant is putting his feet, his thing on the mouse, then there has to be judgment, because there is injustice. And when people share these feelings, of course, it's not. I feel that way, and of course, when there is a difference of opinion about who's the mouse and who's the elephant, that's right. But I think the openness about what is going inside of us makes it a safe space and a free space.
I think you've given it a very interesting. I think let's say whether it's terminology or thought process, but I think we're going in the good direction, Herman.
Yeah, maybe. I hope so. Yeah. So what I experience in practice is that when I just began, of course, every mediator has, I think, the same experience. You are very aware of all the rules and all the things you have to do, and you have just learned a lot in your mediation classes, and you're trying to do your best very much about these things as impartial, neutral, procedural, fairness, etc., etc. And in a way, in the beginning, it didn't work out that well with the persons in my room, because they felt as if I was just not caring about the problems. But I did a lot. So there was a kind of two roles I had before the mediation, just chatting and getting connected together, and asking, how's your life going? Where are you? And afterwards, but in the mediation, I suddenly had to put on that mask and to put on that way of being, the professional mediation attitude. And after a while, I just tried to get rid of that. And now, one of my first mediations, I got my real, how do you call it, a complaint, an official. So there was what is that in English? A kind of warning. Then we have also here, of course, as a mediator, you have to behave in the rules, of course, according to the rules. And there was an official complaint. I don't know the word very well. Is that a good word?
Yeah.
Complaint, I think.
Yeah.
It's not really the good word, but okay. Afterwards, when I tried to do it the other way, more with real engagement, being open about what is getting me into the process of a mediator in my life, why I do things, then I did not have a complaint at all. It just felt neutral. It felt safe. It felt open. And that's a very interesting thing in my own experience, that when you are just there, people are not anymore in the mood of checking out, are you doing things in a good way? They are just there also, and they are part of the process in a kind of in a way that is less reflective, in the sense of meta reflective about the process. They are just in there as persons. And I think also that is not a problem at all, that in a way you are building a kind of humanistic friendship. I think a lot of people that have gone through the process with me, they have also still a connection with me and I with them, because you have together felt a deep experience of connectedness, of humanness. And I think that's also one of the deeper things of mediation in general, that you are experiencing a way of connecting to other human beings that is helping you to view what is a human being, in fact. So it would be very strange when you just have only done your thing, you have your paperwork, you have your solution of the conflict, but that did not also exist a kind of relationship. Always there is then a relationship when people are in their chaos, in their conflict and the panic, and they don't know anymore what they are and what they are at and what is important in their lives. The person that is helping them at that moment, that is just present in this in the very complicated process they are in, it connects us. So why would that be a problem? Of course, you must be very aware of the power balance, and also that people are dependent on you, maybe, so you can have their aspects of unethical connectedness. But when you are aware of that and open about it also, there is no problem, I think. So in mediation, in a way, you connect as persons in a very deep level. And that's a good thing. So also not neutral in that sense.
Well, absolutely. I think this is what the whole thing is, that, like you said, when you bring your authentic self and people connect to that, they can see I mean, we don't have to even tell them. They're intelligent enough. They're there. It's their dispute. They know, and they can gauge people. We sometimes feel that no, someone else has to gauge people, certify them, and then put them in front of people. But these are human connections which have to happen, and people can see through what's happening. And when you bring your authentic self, then they know. And I mean, come off it, they can walk out of the process whenever they want. It's not that they are stuck there. But when they connect to you as the individual, as a human, that humanistic aspect of it, which is what I'm trying to say, that this is the way we have to take it forward, because that clinical approach. And look, again, it could be in a certain, I mean, certain people, let's not even say a certain society. If certain people have had this very different notion of how people connect and how relationships have to be, and again, to a certain extent, we'll have to talk about it, mediation in the formal structure coming from the court system, which is very impersonal. That whole process is very impersonal. Coming from there, that same impersonal aspect came into mediation and the discussion around mediation. So we have to change that narrative totally. I think you're exactly on the right track on that. What you brought in is exactly where we have to go. Yeah.
Yeah, because it also it works that way. So we can have, of course, the most wonderful theories about how things ought to be, but this is how it works. And I think the mediator in the core is a very pragmatic person. It's also a very pragmatic way of doing things and dealing with things. It's coping with the problems that are there and just trying to help people. But even the word helping is a kind of interesting word, of course, because you're also helping yourself. All the persons are there with their needs. Also, the mediator has, at the moment that he's doing his work, even you, when you are giving this whole space in the world for mediation to talk, mediators to talk with each other, to inspire each other, it's of course serving the mediation as a concept, serving the mediators, but it's also serving you. When we are really into things and are alive in what we are doing, it's not only the other one that's at central, it's also ourselves. And the togetherness of all these things is very important, I think. We are grown up in a culture that is very dichotomous. It's just the one or the other, subject, object, you or me. When I was a preacher, I have had 12 years of experience in church here in Holland. And we were also educated that when we are doing a sermon, when we are preaching the word of God, it must never go about, it must not be about ourselves. We must not bring in our own practical things in life. We must not bring our own experience. That was not allowed, because it has to be, it ought to be about what God is thinking, what God is willing, what God is saying. And I think that was a very strange way of doing, because when I only talk about the other or things outside of me, people are not even listening to me. It's not interesting. We are not connecting anymore. So I think it's the both polarities kind of thing. It's not the dichotomy. You have to do things together. So I have, of course, as a mediator in the process of mediation, my own need, my own way of viewing things, and I am there. That's the same thing as I said earlier. And the other one is also even at the same level of importance, is there, and it has its needs, etc., etc. So I think it's very important that I am, as a helper, also open about that I am helped. And as one that is giving wisdom, is also in need of the wisdom of the other. It's always the reciprocal thing. And that makes the process wonderful and even easy in a way, because it's not a burden to be a professional in that sense, but it's just being a human being in a very specific sense of a specific setting where people are in conflict, of course, that has its own tensions. But if I am not there, also in my own need, and also telling about the way I cope with my conflicts, I'm doing my work with less quality, I think.
Yeah, I think that's the point, that coming across as a person, there is a person there with their experiences, and that's why they want you. That's what I'm saying. Finally, the word that is coming up in common, which I keep saying, is the trust. Once the trust is there in the person, and that trust doesn't come from your words, it is their gauge of you in various things. I mean, it could be whatever, it's their gauge, how they do it. And once that trust comes in, all these other things kind of go out, and then they're dealing with the person, and that's what they need. I mean, otherwise, what are we going to do? Artificial intelligence and machine learning will create these things. Just go there, it'll do what you have to want. So I think that's where the person and the actual authentic self, because you were not part of that heart soul spirituality symposium, but these are the things that came out there. I mean, bringing your authentic self and the connections that are being created. And we don't know what all that, we are not words for it, but there's much more happening there. Yep.
Yeah. So, and another thing, that's the last thing I think I have on this topic, is the aspect of curiosity, real curiosity about what are you as another person? How do you feel? How do you think? What's inside of you? Help me to understand you. That's even a part of neutrality for me, in the good sense of the word. That you are in your silence, in your listening, in your openness of receiving what the other person and the two of them or more of them are saying about themselves. Also, then we are just not neutral in the sense of, well, it doesn't matter to me. I'm indifferent. Then, of course, the other one is indeed talking to a kind of robot, kind of artificial intelligent person. It's not possible even for a person to talk about himself when someone is so neutral. So the curiosity and the real need to know the other, willingness, being prepared to be open to all kinds of new knowledges and new experiences that the other has, I think it's a very, very important aspect of all kinds of human interaction, of course, but especially here. And then, of course, it's important that it's to all the ones that are there. So bias in the sense of the one I'm curious about and the other one is I'm indifferent. That's of course a no-go. But in that sense, it's again an aspect of the process that all people are treated in the same way, and that you are trying to get into every universe that is there, every person in his own universe, its own cosmos of realities, and that you're really curious about that. That's a very important part for me in my work, and I think that makes things also flow. And so it matters to me how a person thinks, not because I want to judge it, but because I want to really know the other person, to be together and help him or her to see it his own way or her own way. So that was, I think, the last thing I want to say about that.
I think the curiosity that you're saying, it is genuine curiosity. It's not that it's just curiosity. I mean, coming from genuineness in the sense of genuinely wanting to help resolve the whole thing. So it's genuine from that sense. I think that, again, people can read that. We should not underestimate their understanding of people. They understand. And it's the whole dispute itself is so personal that they need this connection. Otherwise, I mean, they really, if there's that connection is not developed, things cannot go forward, because if you have to go deeper into the person, the dispute, everything around it. You need that connection, you need that genuine curiosity, and I mean, just that, again, I keep saying it so many times, but that heart soul spirituality, the heart soul connection, all that is required. This is such a very personal aspect of someone's life. I mean, it's taking their mind for so long, it's there, working on them every day to be able to bring it out. First of all, to bring it out, to connect with you, and to connect with you, it has to connect to the person and the human being, that part of it, and connect at different levels. So, Haman, exactly the direction that when I say that world mediation circle and the humanistic approach is exactly where we are going, and we're on the absolute right track.
Yeah, it's wonderful, and it's also very what I said earlier. It makes the work you are doing even not feeling as work. It's just being there. With everything of your experience in the past and being present, the only good preparation is having good sleep. So to be able to be there with everything that's just going inside of you. And so the personal, indeed, the personal aspect of the work, even it's not the aspect, it's the core of it, that makes it also able to be very trustful. You can trust the process. You can trust that everything that is going on in a room where people, or wherever, where people are connecting together, things are flowing, things are going, and you have just to be part of that. So it's not about neutrality I'm talking about, of course, but it's the personal thing you stress so much, the humanistic approach, the heart, soul, spirit. I think that's a very, very important thing that is needed in our culture. Because very, very often people are just talking with the experts in the expectation that they say what to do and what is true and what is good. And it's such a shame in a way. It's also even the expert is made a kind of super being out of contact with the person that is asking for help, and the person that is asking for help is degrading himself at a level, and we must help people get there where they are and put ourselves back where we all have the humanity in common. So yeah.
Absolutely. But when you said that the only preparation is to get good sleep, I don't know, for me, actually, sometimes in my sleep, or in terms of this, not sleep, maybe it's happening when I'm consciously there, but actually I'm thinking of resolution and how it can be resolved. You take that, people don't realize that. They think it's just that aspect of you being there at that moment and not taking away from that. And it's playing somewhere in your mind, and you really want to help them because you genuinely want to help them. You're part of that whole process, about you're involved in it. So those are things which are working on our minds, subconsciously or whatever. We're actually wanting to help, and that's what I'm saying when I say the mediator mindset. That comes with it, that you're actually genuinely thinking of resolution all the time, up till you don't actually reach that point when that happens. And then, of course, the other things which go with it, because you might think that the resolution is, something comes to you, because look, again, Herman, it comes from the way people perceive mediation, different ways. So that very, very facilitative part of it, and not having anything else to do, maybe these things will not come. It's just that moment, that conversation, I'm just having to create that conversation, and that's it. I don't have any other involvement in it. So that would be one way mediation is done, and they may be perfectly all right if that's the way people want that. Then the other way is that there is more involvement. There is more involvement in where it's going, how it's going. So I think that also has to be looked at as to how mediation has been promoted, and do you really want to put these boxes for people that this is it and no more? Whether can your person do that? When you're bringing a person into it, can that person do it? And first of all, should those limitations be put by maybe law? Maybe some legislations have spoken about it, that this is what you can do and not beyond. So they actually have that in some countries. So that part of it, I think we have to all, maybe people have to discuss it, because for me, legislation and all have no relevance when people are sitting together. And for the state to say we will regulate how people sit together and whom you sit with, that is where the colonization discussion comes in. That you are not going to and should not be getting into their houses. Whom are they talking to? Whom are they sitting with? Who's assisting them in resolving their dispute? This comes from that whole colonization and colonizers mindset.
Yeah, yes, that's right. And sometimes I make the comparison with seeking help for your bodily problems, for health. In the beginning, when there are small problems, you have your own way of dealing with things. You have your herbs, you have your medicine at home, and when it does not work, you go to another expert and help more, get more stuff. And when it's in the end almost impossible to cope with your unhealthy problems, you go to the hospital and get surgery. And I think law is surgery. It's an extreme situation. And in a sense, people, when they are there, must, as soon as possible, be getting home again, so they can do it themselves with their own herbs and medicine. So you solve your problems always at home. When it doesn't work, you get an expert, a mediator. But the expert is not an expert, it's just a person that is able to understand where you are and helping you sorting things out. But if that doesn't work, you go to the hospital, get surgery, you go to court and in law. So maybe that's helpful there.
No, very interesting. I'll tell you this analogy because I brought it up sometimes.
Oh.
That, like you said, that natural cures. So some people, like in India, we have Ayurveda, and you saying herbs, then all that people herbs they use in their houses and all. And on the other things is this modern medical science and everything. That two different, like two extremes, like you said, the two extremes. Now for the state to regulate whether you should put pepper in your food or not, or turmeric in your food or not, and how much you should put, that is where exactly that is the difference that I'm trying to say, that you don't regulate these things. What a person does in their house in relation to how they want to use these natural herbs and everything, it's their life, that let them be. Now you can't, if you are going to start looking at these aspects also, what are you trying to do? So that's where this comes in. These are, let's compare it to the natural cures. This is actually comes naturally to people. First of all, connecting at that personal level comes naturally to people, and whom they will connect with, it's their gauge of people, their trust in the person, that's theirs. Don't take it away from them. And on the other end, the aspect of the courts, and like you said, I'm comparing it to the modern medical science, that's the thing, that surgery and all that will exist. We're not going to say, we're not saying, oh, that is not going to be, but it should not reach that level. Sometimes things can be cured at a much early stage. That's what it's. I mean, again, let me go to legislation part. Again, legislation, I keep saying this. I mean, when people who are, say, in Ayurveda, we have what we call Ayurvedic doctors also. So they have their way of going about it. And the modern medical science also have doctors. So the doctors on both ends, let's just call it that, doctors. And now people who are in that modern medical part of it, they are talking about regulating the Ayurvedic part of it. That's the way I look at it. And they have no understanding of the process. They have no understanding of that. It's a totally different area.
Yeah.
And the court system is that part. Now, court system to be connected with this, so with the modern medical science being connected to Ayurveda and trying to push that over this, I think that's where things are going wrong. And that's where the foundation of the way mediation has gone, has progressed, again, connected to the court system, I think is made it impersonal and be taken away from the way people would actually naturally connect to. So I think what you brought in is actually what we need to discuss, and it makes it easier to discuss this part, this analogy.
Yes, and I think it's very important to see that when people talk about conflict and conflict resolution, that the model that is used to understand it and what is needed then is taken out of a very extreme, atypical situation of surgery, of the ultimate remedy in court. But in a sense, conflict is just part of growing up. It's part of all the normal things in life. And then also the concept of neutrality, for example, to talk about that again, is of course a part of the process that is in the ultimate remedy setting, a normal way of talking about things. But it's not the normal way we talk about you being a human being and coping with the conflicts we have in life. So I think it's very important to give the responsibility for conflict, dealing with conflicts, etc., back to where it belongs, to the people themselves, to where we are from 0 till 99 in our normal lives, and that we are helping as a mediator. Just we call it here the huisarts, the house doctor. The doctor is just near the patient in their own space, in their own situation. That's where the mediator belongs, not in the hospital.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's like you're saying, that people connect to this on a very basic level, on a person-to-person level, and you can't make that impersonal. You're trying to make something which is so personal into an impersonal thing, and you will always go wrong. You can't get it right there. So that's why I'm saying that system will prevail. They're really there. We can't fight that because it's there for a certain reason. Like I don't know whether you heard me saying, I keep saying this, that justice delayed is justice denied, and that's what's happening. There's denial of justice, and the judiciary, the court system has understood that, and to show this thing that justice is being done if you go for mediation, that mediation is access to justice. I think those are absurd concepts which are interpreted. The judiciary interprets the whole thing themselves because it suits their purpose. So I think that let them keep doing that. We're not going to fight that system. But Herman, we are going down right to the grassroots level. We are creating this Netherlands mediation circle. We are going to bring people who have the same thought process, and people are there. They'll all come together because they'll connect to it. It's a very basic thing they will connect to, and they will connect to it, and the whole thing will develop. Because look, whenever I talk to people, I get the feedback is very, very clear from around the world that there are people who connect to this, and there are people who have that mindset. And I'm telling you, when we get together, when we're putting it together, we'll feel good about it. It might be small. It'll start small, grows the way it grows, how much time it takes. That's perfectly all right. I mean, it's not that we'd have to do everything in one day, that 8 billion people on this planet are going to connect to the same concept. It's not going to happen, but we're going to make a start, and we'll grow as it goes along.
Yeah, that's what grassroots is about. Yeah. Thank you very much. Wonderful.
Perfect. So I think that's Herman, you've given it a good direction. You've taken it in the way that we have been discussing it. So I think that's what was required. But in connection with the philosophy and mediation, if there were certain things left out, we have some time. You can talk about that if you want.
Yeah, we will do it later. Very good.
If you want to do it now, I'm perfectly all right. If there is something that you want to bring in that discussion, you can bring it now. Because I really feel sorry that there was so much that you want to bring in, and we could not do part 2.
Yeah, it's no problem. But I think we just must plan a different session for that. That's very good. For now, it's all right.
Perfect. So
thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And of course, please try and attend the closing session with Ken. Please try to do that, and please drop in for other sessions. So they've all been interesting sessions that people have brought in, very interesting aspects.
Yeah, that's wonderful to hear that you are talking about the language of the mediation language near.
That starts. Let me tell you when that starts. Give you the date itself. So of course I'll make the schedule out like I always do, and give those actual time slots. But it's going to be language and mediation. 21st February is International Mother Language Day. So that we'll start on that day. It seems that would be a good day to start, and then we'll take it for how many days? We have some time there. So we'll take it up to the 28th of February. Yeah. We can do that. Yeah.
Because I'm not really from the methods, but when I am into a method, it's the narrative method. Narrative mediation. That's a very, very wonderful way of viewing things. And also when it talks about the neutrality, they also stress the engagement. and the transparency of being there. Also in your own, it's also called mediation as co-creation. It's a very important term there, co-authoring the new conflict-free story. So it's a very interesting way of dealing with the language, the narrative mediation approach. Yeah.
Herman, I'm sure you bring all the elements. I'm sure you bring in the facilitative, the evaluative, the narrative, the transformative. Definitely transformative, definitely must be happening there. So you bring in all of them, and I'm sure there are also methods which haven't been given words. The humanistic mediation with Greg is coming after you, his session.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, he talks about humanistic mediation. So we'll get more terminology as we go on, and we don't really need the words. We just need people connecting with it. So,
when it works, and that's what it's all about. Yeah.
How it works, it doesn't matter. Words then won't matter. So thank you very much, Herman.